A disastrous day for the Falcons in Indy. A key injury, another Matt Ryan interception, and a defensive performance that leave a lot of questions at the feet of Coach Dan Quinn. Where does Atlanta go from here? We'll talk about it next on AJC Falcons News Now.
This is AJC Falcons News Now, sponsored by Miller Lite. Here are your hosts, Brandon Adams and former Atlanta Falcon Chuck Smith.
Oh, Chuck, we got some stuff to talk about today, and it is not good. Hello, everybody. Welcome to AJC Falcons News Now, sponsored by Miller Lite. My name is Brandon Adams. This is the former Atlanta Falcon Chuck Smith, and it was not a good day for the Dirty Birds up in Indianapolis against the Colts. A loss that leads to a lot of tough questions. We'll deal with it all over the course of the next hour, and we'll, I'm sure, hear from a bunch of angry Falcons fans as well. I guess, Chuck, before we kind of get started with anything, just your opening thought on what you saw against Indianapolis.
Disappointing, and I'll tell you why, B. The Falcons came out slow, and you'd think after the last game against Philadelphia, where they came out fast, but very disappointed in what I saw in the first half effort. The disorganization also, to me, the disorganization, the effort that they came out with, what wasn't what I expected by a team that I picked, before the preseason to have a chance to go to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, exactly.
Super Bowl like.
Yeah, it's really tough to see.
Yeah.
And as I said before, a lot of Falcons fans going to weigh in on this all day long. It's AJC Falcons News Now, sponsored by Miller Lite. Miller Lite is the official beer of the Atlanta Falcons. It's the original light beer there as well. It tastes great. It's only 96 calories, so make sure you check out Miller Lite when you're getting ready to enjoy your game day parties. And we do have some good news on today's show. We're actually going to be joined a little bit later on by one of your former teammates, one of the great Falcons of all time, former Falcon Jesse Tuggle, going to join us in a little less than a half an hour from right now. We get a chance to have him on the phone. So maybe Jesse will have the prescription for what's wrong with Atlanta and how to get it fixed. So maybe the Hammer will provide that today.
Well, the Hammer watches every game. I actually had a chance to text a little bit last night, so it'll be interesting to see what he has to say. Before
we get to that, though, and before we hear from you and your comments, let's talk about what some are saying about what happened with Atlanta last night and the disastrous loss, or I should say yesterday afternoon, of the Indianapolis Colts. Let me start with Michael Cunningham, columnist for the AJC, who, like a lot of Falcons fans would want, critical of what happened yesterday, saying at Indianapolis on Sunday, the Falcons once again weren't ready from the start, which echoes what Chuck said a moment ago. That's twice in 2 road games this season, Cunningham writes. That's on the head coach. The Falcons rallied, but Quinn's defense, bad at the beginning, couldn't stop the Colts in their last 2 possessions. That's on the coordinator. So Cunningham taking the idea there that 2 of the Falcons' biggest problems come at the head coach, come from the defensive coordinator. That's obviously both the same guy right now. That's Dan Quinn. Mark Bradley also writes this. Interesting stat. They're 19-19 since winning the NFC title on January 22nd, 2017. They have a slew of good players, but as a whole, they're a mediocrity. They've changed their coordinators, Bradley writes, and again, they're 1-2, same as last year. This team still hasn't gotten any better, makes us wonder if it will. So 2 of the AJC columnists, Mark Bradley, Michael Cunningham, harsh words there for Atlanta, coming off what happened on Sunday against the Colts. It's understandable. No doubt our comment section, Chuck, going to echo very much the same thing.
Well, you're right, and I agree with what they're saying. I'm watching the game. I'm watching guys run off the field, 12 men on the field, 10 men on the field, so I'm sitting here like, what's going on?
Yeah.
And I know we're going to get into Matt Ryan, Julio Jones, but you got an MVP, the best receiver in the league. It's not supposed to be like that.
Yeah.
It's really not. What is it, 150 million?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just unfortunate that the Falcon fans are kind of seeing a team that they really have no identity. I mean, it's like it's the first year of when Dan Quinn got here.
Well, identity is such an important thing for me, and your quarterback is supposed to be the center of that identity, the big money you spend on Julio Jones. It's a day like this where you hope they're able to bail you out on what otherwise is kind of a disappointing situation where it is a slow start. You hope you can lean on what I believe the identity of this team is supposed to be. But Ryan's pick yesterday kind of also prevented that from happening, kind of forcing the ball a little bit to Stocker of all people. That's a difficult thing to be able to explain there a little bit of all the people try to force it to. Why force it to Stocker there in that moment? Hard to understand. Caetano Lopez Sapero also a little bit critical of Ryan in the comment section here. And, listen, Ryan is the high-profile quarterback. He's got the big contract. We've said this before on our shows that each and every week, for the good and for the bad, Ryan's going to get a lot of attention. I do think it's fair to say yesterday Ryan did not do all he could have done to help you on a day when a lot of aspects of this organization were struggling. maybe you could have gotten a little more from your quarterback yesterday than you did.
Yeah, because the offensive line protected well. I mean, I watched this offensive line. They were Indianapolis. They were running all kind of twists and turns. And the offensive line, they were solid. But it just seemed like Matt, wasn't confident where he wanted to go with the ball. And on the interception, you take 3 off the board. And here's my thing about Matt Ryan. He came out later and said, well, maybe I should have, taken the sack, maybe, not thrown that and taken the 3 points. In a nutshell is what he said. Yeah. At this point, we shouldn't be hearing that. Yeah. We shouldn't be hearing that. You should already know, don't take any, risk that could hurt your team, and that was a big one.
Jamal Williams says, critical of both Dan Quinn for his head coaching performance and his defensive coordinator performance as well, echoing some of what Michael Cunningham wrote at AJC.com over the weekend. And I certainly think it's fair to lay some of this at the feet of Quinn, because when you think about starts to games, first half calamities, that does seem to speak to preparation. Now, Quinn, going back to the Minnesota game, was pretty clear after that game that he actually thought the team went into Minneapolis with a good game plan and expected the team to play better. But now, all of a sudden, it almost looks like an emerging trend of when you don't seem ready from the jump against the Vikings, you don't seem ready from the jump against the Colts, all of a sudden there are fans who are going to tie those two storylines together just a bit.
Right, so think about this. The first couple plays that Indianapolis had, they were dragging Falcons.
Yeah.
They were breaking. One of the first runs, he breaks through 2-3 tackles.
Yeah.
He's running through guys. They make a point on TV to say that. So from my standpoint, I'm like, what is Falcons? Where's the energy we talked about? Where's the toughness? And early on, Indianapolis out-toughed the Falcons, out-energized the Falcons, because they were breaking tackles. I mean, to me, the Falcons, this was a bad tackling game, in my opinion.
And that's something else that's going to go at the feet of Quinn, because he's the head coach of this team. He's the defensive coordinator as well, defensive-minded head coach. I guess it was when I was driving in this morning to come to work, I was going to think to ask you about this, though. I'm not in Flowery Branch every day. I'm not seeing the team practice, but my understanding of NFL practices now, maybe compared to when you played, there's less tackling that goes on week to week. How do you tackle in a game if you don't tackle during practice? That's not unique to the Falcons. Every NFL team, for the most part, kind of operates in the same fashion now. You're resting players throughout the week, at least my understanding is. How do you work on your physicality during the week when you obviously want to protect guys during practice as much as you can?
Best way to describe it, challenged. You're challenged because if you don't practice it, we all know practice makes us what? Better.
Yeah.
So if you never get a chance to do it, and it's a huge, one of the biggest, I think, negative that the collective bargaining agreement in the NFL did. The players did this to themselves. I understand for safety, but it definitely has affected guys trying to make tackles. It's been about safety, but you can see clearly there's not much practice going on.
Jeffrey Longwell says, he says about the Falcons, they'd be shocked if they even get the wild card, should have beaten the Colts. And from that standpoint, Jeffrey, you're talking about something that I actually have said on this show before, which is for as much attention as the Philadelphia game got, home opener, somewhat of a modern-day new rivalry to the Falcons in Philadelphia with the Eagles, it was really the Colts game that I thought was the more important game for Atlanta's playoff chances, because some people, right now Philly doesn't look this way, but some people thought of Philadelphia as a potential Super Bowl contender. That's the kind of game that does not necessarily add up as always a must-win. But a winnable road game, which is what Indianapolis was supposed to be, I always felt like the Falcons' playoff chances rested more with how do you perform, because you got to find yourself a couple road wins somewhere. Lucas Oil Stadium seemed like as good a chance as that as maybe any place would provide for you. I thought losing to Indianapolis was as much of a real tough scenario for your playoff chances as the Philadelphia game could have been. I always thought people were making too much of the Philly game and not enough of the Indy game, in other words.
I agree with you on that. And real quick, you are like the Falcons whisperer. Every game you have picked, what's going to happen, good or bad. But you make a good point about the Falcons having the opportunity. It's just from a confidence thing now. You go into Indianapolis, a team that has a second-year quarterback.
Yeah.
You got average wide receivers, good offensive line, right? An average, again, and here's something else, B. Am I giving the Falcons personnel too much credit? Is that something that's happening? Because I made a statement last week, the Falcons are better.
Yeah.
We got better personnel, but do we really? That's one of the things that's starting to, and I understand, Vic and Tack, they were drafted first round, but just because you're a first rounder, does that automatically give you credibility that you're better?
Yeah.
So I'm starting to even looking at myself from the standpoint of, if you don't perform, does it really, should you be getting credit for how good you are as a roster?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Well, here's how I'll answer that question. I don't think you were wrong for being optimistic at the beginning of the season, nor do I think Falcons fans were wrong for being optimistic at the beginning of the season. And I think it's probably right for at least some optimism to be left even after a 1-2 start. However, the issue here is the fact that when you see similar issues plaguing you in both your road losses this season, and some of this feels like a hangover from what was left over after last season, even though there have been coordinator changes and some things that ought to freshen up the overall look and profile of the team, the fact that some of this still seemingly hangs around, I think a Falcons fan is right to be upset about that. The optimism at the beginning of the season was not wrong, and maybe, certainly you should probably say that there's still plenty of opportunity for Atlanta to turn this around this year. But what you've seen through 3 games, even some aspects of the win against the Eagles, it is cause for concern.
The win against the Eagles, the Falcons still had to pull it out somewhat in the end, make a big play, but I think one of the disappointing things is from my standpoint, and I don't want to pile on, but I don't know what else the way to go right now in a game like this. Okay, Matt Ryan had a good second half. Julio did good. But I think when you start seeing the things that have plagued this team, like you said, over and over and over, and like for me to watch KZ bust a call while he's looking in the backfield, he goes, looks, and gets the wrong guy on the trick play on the swing pass. You see Deion Jones go to where he's supposed to go to the flats. KZ's looking in the backfield. Then Isaiah Oliver on the last touchdown, he was loafing. He stood there.
Yeah.
He thought it was going to be a run. Remember, play action pass, and then at the game, he thought it was going to run, so he steps up. But those are the kind of little things you cannot let happen as a defense. When you're deep, when you got to make a stop, you had to make a stop to get off the field, right?
Yeah. We're going to hear more of your comments coming up in our Facebook comment section. It's AJC Falcons News Now, sponsored by Miller Lite. That's Chuck Smith, the former Falcon. My name is Brandon Adams. Let me also let you hear from Falcons coach Dan Quinn, who said, admittedly, this team did not come out from the gate at the beginning of this game the way that it should. Fought hard near the end, but not enough for the full 60 minutes. Here's Dan Quinn.
Didn't get what we came here to do. We told the team it was certainly a tale of 2 halves in a lot of respects. We didn't have very many plays early on. I think we only had 20 plays offensively, and we were able to move it, but came back in the second half, played better. But we've got to control what we can, and to have 16 penalties and be -1 in the turnover margin, that puts you in a difficult spot.
We've talked about the Ryan interception. We'll talk more about that, but it's the other number that Quinn mentions that just registers so prominent with me. 16 penalties yesterday.
Unbelievable.
Think about how much, whether it's you're subtracting from your own offensive total or adding to the Indianapolis total, 16 penalties, that's a huge yardage swing one way or another, and that, as much as anything, explains the loss. And unfortunately, even if it's individual players making individual mistakes, fairly or unfairly, that's all going to be brought right back to Quinn. And I want to accentuate this. Fairly or unfairly, because it may be unfair to blame Quinn for all of that.
Right.
But boy, fans are going to want to do that. They're going to say, why am I watching my team on Sunday have that many penalties? What's my coach doing about that? Quinn's going to hear that.
Yeah, and you're talking from the standpoint of what Quinn's going to hear. Let me talk about from a player standpoint, because I was a former player. Shame on you. You're letting your coach down. These aren't things that are coached. They're professionals.
Yeah.
Everyone knows you can't hold. Was it Brown? A guy pass rushes behind him. He grabs him from behind. Matt Ryan got the ball out. The players are letting Quinn down on this one.
That's interesting. Yeah,
it is. Again, we talked about who gets all the blame. I totally understand that. And Quinn, you didn't get him ready, but as a former player, players, you're letting the guy down. You're letting your team down. You guys are veterans. Remember, this is a Super Bowl ready built team.
Yeah.
Again, so
a win now mode.
Win now.
When you bring in new coordinators like this, when you have this veteran presence, big time vets making a bunch of money, you're in a win now mode right there.
You're right, and this is something that I say, and this is something that the players understand. There's 2 kinds of players. You got dumb players, and you got smart players. Not dumb off the field, not dummies. I'm talking about football dumb.
Okay.
Dumb players make the mistakes that teams that don't win do. Smart players don't make those little mistakes that they control. So there's 2 different kind of players right now. The Falcons players are dumb players from the standpoint of on the field when it comes to those situations, not dummies off the field, but those are dumb penalties that happen to teams that don't win. Smart teams don't do that.
Well, there's no doubt it wasn't a sharp performance yesterday at all by the Falcons. By the way, Mark Barron says he was at the game yesterday, talking about the listless start to the game. Terrell Pridgeon says, why are we playing so slack in the first half, then pumped up, ready to kill in the second half when it's too late? And that idea of it being a little too late, I know that resonates with a lot of Falcons fans of, you like to see the comeback. And in the Minneapolis game, I think a lot of that was just empty yardage. Yesterday, Atlanta gave itself a chance to win this game. I would say more so than the Minneapolis game, but it dug itself too big of a hole from the beginning.
Yeah, it did. And we talked about the Falcons getting the running game going, that went, got going early, but you'd think that the Falcons would get the play action pass going, but everything just stopped. All of a sudden, Devontae Freeman, boom, boom, Devontae's, oh, wow, it's going to happen. Then everything stopped.
Yeah.
The Falcons, they came out slow. It was like, wow, where's our big receiver at? Where's our MVP quarterback at? But it was tough watching them come out. You know what, though? That's a mindset. Remember we talked about disrespect? The week before when Minnesota beat the Falcons, one of my biggest thoughts was, as a former player, when you come out, you got embarrassed on national TV, you coming out with some fire, you're going to come out in the first quarter, and what's going to happen is, what happens after that's about coaching. You're going to come out with that dog in you. But guess what? Now, after the Philly game, they won. They weren't disrespected. Everything. Remember we said the high is high and the low is low? They were on that high, but they came out just like it did against Philly because they weren't disrespected from what I see. There wasn't that sense of urgency, but they were. So against Philly, they felt disrespected. They came out, throwing blows?
That's right.
At this game, they came out like at Philly, almost like the first game, like in Minnesota. Like
and Julio warned you about that too. We played the audio on Friday of Julio Jones saying, hey, you can't be satisfied with just one win. That's a good point. Oscar Romo, also watching us on Facebook, brings up the pass protection that Ryan's got. What have you thought about the protection for Ryan thus far?
I thought it was solid in this game. I thought Matt had time. I thought even in the first half he had time to get there. This Indianapolis Colts pass rush, I was sitting at home like this watching my son. I said, these cats can't rush. Matt going to have time. Almost every time. Of course, you're going to get there naturally. Get there. I'm watching the rush. I'm rewinding it back 2 and 3 times. The Falcons were solid. They were good enough when it came to the pass protection. Because I was watching me and my son. I was like, that son, look, because we're watching as I'm teaching him. I said, son, Matt Ryan have time because this team can't rush.
That's interesting.
They couldn't rush.
Yeah, you called that. Now, as far as the idea of, some have mentioned, Mark Barron and others, of Atlanta getting off that slow start in the road, Quinn acknowledged that as well in his post-game press conference from yesterday. Here's a little more from Falcons coach Dan Quinn.
We've definitely got to get our road mentality right. This week's example, got to get some stops, and I thought they did a good job controlling the ball early to create some first downs, but I think the fouls had something to do with that. We've got to get that part under control for sure. We can control what we can, but it's going to be hard when we don't create any takeaways and have that many fouls.
So obviously that's more on the penalty stuff, but at the beginning there, the notion of the road mentality. As a guy that's played big in big road games before, how do you develop that? How do you get your mind right during the week to know that, as opposed to a crowd that's cheering your every move on Sunday night versus Philadelphia, you're going to have hostility facing you at Lucas Oil Stadium, and that crowd's got a pretty good reputation. How do you get that road mentality as a player?
I tell you how you do it. On the road, number one, you don't go hang. I'm not saying they doing this, but you come together as a team. It's the night during that team meeting. So that team meeting, when you come together, everybody's what? Everybody's as one. We have our mind frame, and you can tell the difference now. When a lot of guys go on the road, not saying the Falcons, you got family members there, you got distractions. To me, the teams that went on the road, it's that mindset that you have. Everybody's at breakfast focus. Everybody's doing everything in synergy, because it is a mindset. And again, it's a veteran mindset. The veterans need to come out and make sure, number one, we're ready. So the veterans got to walk the walk. So how are you going to tell a young guy to step up when you ain't ready? So to me, it's a tough one. To me, that's where the leadership steps in. So there's some flaws there, in my opinion, when it starts the night before on that Saturday meeting. I'd love to be on the road to see what's happening, and you'll tell a lot by what happens on the Saturday night.
That is former Falcon Chuck Smith. My name is Brandon Adams. This is AJC Falcons News Now, sponsored by Miller Lite. Miller Lite is the official beer of the Atlanta Falcons, and a great choice for you when you're getting ready to watch the Dirty Birds on the weekend. Make sure you check out Miller Lite. Okay, so couple programming notes. We're about 5 minutes away from Jesse Tuggle joining us on the phone. Jesse obviously always will have a strong opinion on what's going on here. No one knows this organization certainly any better than Jesse does, so he'll do that with us coming up in a couple of minutes. We're also going to hear from Falcons quarterback Matt Ryan on today's show. We'll talk about the Keanu Neal. I mean, just the absolutely devastating injury and the ridiculous flag on Neal after the injury. We'll have to deal with some of that. So we'll do a lot here, and a bunch of it's going to involve your comments there as well. So let me do a few more of those from right now. Lorenzo McCord says 3 consecutive red zone interceptions is a problem, mentioning obviously the one that he throws yesterday. The line gave him good time in the pocket. No excuse for throwing the ball right to the safety 3 weeks in a row. Those turnovers keep the defense on the field too long. It's deflating towards the whole team. And we said this last week. When it's a quick change situation, that can be a deflating moment for the defense. And as someone else mentioned before, Atlanta's supposed to be like a 30-point offense. Somebody said this in our Facebook comment section before. And when you're falling short of that, when you're now having to ask your defense to maybe do more than the salary cap allocation would suggest that you're maybe supposed to do, I mean, that does go back to the issues of what is the Falcons' identity supposed to be?
All right, $100 million quarterback, basically, what, $65 million guaranteed wide receiver. It can't happen. You got an MVP and a great receiver. To me, that's where it starts. You got 5 guys at any given time that were first rounders. You got a receiver that's a first rounder. I mean, there really are no excuses, really.
Yeah.
There's nothing you can say. There's nothing, when you look at the points per game average, there's nothing nice you can say right now. They had good protection here and there. But to me, even the things that we're talking about fixing are trumped by what we're supposed to be. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You can fix all these little things, but this is an offense, but from the perception is, they're supposed to put up 30 plus. They're supposed to be the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah.
They're supposed to be the New England Patriots, and we're far from that. So the excuses of the little, you know what, that's cool, and I've said this again, I want to make sure our viewers understand. The little things that we're talking about are really minuscule to what the big story should be. This is a superstar put together offense.
Yeah.
We ain't even talked about Sanu. We ain't talked about me.
Right.
So, you know, this is way bigger than we really understand at
Well,
this
you
point.
mentioned like the teams like the Chiefs and the Rams and others,
Yeah.
Patriots too. Now, Patriots have obviously strengths on both sides of the ball.
But they don't have, but I'm sorry to interrupt. They ain't got them receivers. They don't have our receivers.
Right.
They don't have the running
Yeah.
back. You know what I'm saying? We have them.
They had one,
got
but he
tight
acted.
end.
They had one of the receivers, but he acted the fool, and he's out of there now.
So again, at New England.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to pile on, but I'm talking facts.
No, I know what you're saying.
At New England, can you say right now New England has what we have?
Right.
Not supposed to.
Yeah, and certainly in terms of big name brand
Yeah.
personnel. And if you look at all these teams that are successful in the NFL right now, I mean, you'd be hard pressed to find a counterexample to it's high flying offense, it's
Yeah.
moving the ball quick, it's scoring points left and right. I mean, that's really the recipe for success in the NFL right now. And Atlanta, in terms of establishing that identity of its own, what Kyle Shanahan had this team doing a couple years ago, right now this Falcons organization is falling short of that.
Yeah, it is. And it's just so frustrating. And then when you see them coming out, you hear the same things week in and week out. But to me, it has to do with execution. It has to do with being on the same page. But ultimately, in the NFL, it's about, are you a dog? Are you willing to try to annihilate and embarrass the guys you're going against? And I'm not saying that just to say it. I had that mindset.
Yeah.
The great pass rushers, the great quarterbacks. Tom Brady is well documented. He's trying to annihilate. But to me, the Falcons, when you're built around an offense, to me, that I like having a defensive mentality. When you're a passing offense, it doesn't set a precedent of being physical and being tough.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So to me, it starts with, like you said, who are we? Are we
Yeah.
a defense? But we're, it's mainly built around an offense.
And Stephen Shipp says the same thing in our Facebook comment section. This team does not have that special something right now.
Yeah.
We have a bunch of guys that are happy playing football but not winning. Now, I guess, Stephen, to that point, I would ask Chuck, how much can the adversity through these first couple of weeks, people doubting you, people questioning Quinn? I mean, we know that football players sometimes perform well with chips on their shoulder. How much can this team right now feed off the adversity that, even if it's a self-inflicted wound, how much can they feed off the adversity that's now gathered around the organization?
Well, there is something that we can lean on here, B. The season ain't over yet.
That's right.
I've seen teams come back and have great seasons. I think the year we went to Super Bowl, I think we were 1-3,
Yeah.
something like that, 1-2. But it's
A little bit
not
of a slow
over
start
yet.
a couple years ago as well.
Again, we're 1-2. Let's keep it in perspective. Right now, we got some glaring weaknesses, but that's why you trust in your coach, your coordinators to get it back on track. You hope you got veteran players. So it can be put back on track. I mean, come on now. What we got? 13 games left? I mean, but we're evaluating the now,
Right,
not the future.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it can.
I think it's important to hear both those
Yeah.
sentiments, that there's still plenty of time
Yeah.
for this Atlanta team to
Definitely.
turn it around, but fair is fair. First 3 games have not given Falcons fans what they wanted to see.
We're talking about today.
Yeah,
We
that's
got all we
exactly
can
right.
focus on is where we are today, and the Falcons didn't perform up to par.
All right, so good news. We're going to get Jesse Tuggle on the phone here in just a moment. We'll talk to him about what he saw yesterday and what he sees in this organization overall, and we'll reminisce about one of the great careers any Falcons put together. Speaking of the Atlanta Falcons, the AJC, proud partners of the Atlanta Falcons, and one of the ways we show that off is with this Falcons cooler right here. Falcons logo, and this can be yours as a special gift, a way of saying thank you when you sign up to be an AJC subscriber. You can go to the website subscribe.ajc.com/Falcons News Now. That's subscribe.ajc.com/Falcons News Now. And a lot of different choices. There's the you get the e-paper every single day. You can get a combination of e-paper with Sunday delivery. You can get 7 days a week delivery, and the e-paper there as well. A couple different ways to read that. And with each and every one of these, you also get this Atlanta Falcons branded cooler as a special gift. As I said before, the AJC, proud partners of the Atlanta Falcons, and we want to show that off to you when you become a subscriber to the AJC. So a lot of folks are weighing in here. We're going to keep doing that. We're going to hear from Matt Ryan a little bit later on. Ryan, to his credit, takes head on the fact that he threw an interception, and he doesn't run from that. A lot of criticism coming of Ryan in our comment section today, but we will certainly let you hear Ryan's own words on that. Jared Smith also says if it weren't for the flags and defense, the defense would have made some threes and out, and we would have won. But obviously those penalties certainly
It's
did.
the flags.
Yeah, too many of those. And a
To
lot
me,
of
that's the story of the game. And then to me, the defense, you had a chance you'd have got off the field a couple times. I mean, they jumped off. Jack Crawford jumped offside early, but the one with Grady in the second half, that was huge. Jumping off sides, but those are the kind of self-inflicted wounds that you just can't have. But to me, the reason why the Falcons ultimately lost, it affected the offense and the defense, it was the penalties.
Yeah.
I mean, they were set back. I mean, it affected both sides. I think the Falcons win that game if the penalties aren't where they are.
All right, it's the AJC Falcons News Now. Brandon Adams, former Falcon Chuck Smith. It's time now, sponsored by Miller Lite, for our Miller Lite Minute. We talked to one of the great Falcons of all time, the Hammer himself, Jesse Tuggle, a guy who was a pivotal figure, along with none other right over here to my left.
Now that's the GOAT now. That's the Falcons defensive GOAT.
Both of you big contributors to that 1998 NFC Championship team. First of all, Jesse, let me say thank you and welcome here to AJC Falcons News Now, sponsored by Miller Lite. I really appreciate your time and really appreciate you being with us, and we certainly hope you're doing well today.
Hey, thanks, Brandon. I'm doing great. It's good to be on with you and my buddy Chuck. What's up, Chucky?
What's up, Hammer? What is
everything
that picture they got? You ain't had that hair in 20 years. You dread it out. Mike got a picture of Jesse with the low cut.
Hey, look, I know, right? Listen, I've been having my hair locked up for the last 8.5 years, so it almost time for me to get a haircut. I think I need a haircut.
Well, Jesse, it's great to have you part of the program, and obviously for some Falcons fans, there is some disappointment today after the loss yesterday to the Indianapolis Colts. What would your message be here? I mean, as Chuck and I were talking about before, this is obviously a team that struggled a little bit in the early going, yet there's still plenty of time for the season to be turned around and for this team to be playing better football by the time the year's done. What would you tell Falcons fans about what you've seen thus far?
You know what? Obviously, when I look at the Falcons play, they have enough talent to win. So that's not the problem. We all know that talent's not the problem. The problem is you got to be disciplined and you got to execute. And obviously, when you watch it this week and you see the 16 penalties, there's no way you can win like that. Coach Quinn is doing a great job as far as being a head coach and going back to a defense coordinator. But somehow, though, the defense is not responding. They got to respond. I don't know what they're going to take, but from your front four to your front seven, and as far as the secondary, everybody got to get on the same page defensively, and you got to make plays. I mean, you got to make plays. You're not going to win by showing up. You're going to have to go out there, and you're going to have to put your helmet on people. And I know it's a passing league now, but I think sometimes, the linebacker's not as strong. They may be faster, but they're not as strong. The defensive guys, they're worried about the big hits and all this, but you have to tackle people. I think there's a lot of missed tackles last week. So there's a lot of combination of stuff that can be fixed. As a Falcon fan, I don't think there should be much worry that we can't do it. We just got to fix the little things, and once you fix the little thing, it'll take care of the big things.
Yeah, that's well said.
Yeah, Jesse, you've been in coverage a lot. You're a great cover linebacker also. Talk about some of the busted coverages, because I saw the one to the flat, Jesse, they ran the fake to the flat, and I saw Deion Jones was going to the flat. Then I think I seen KZ, he bit on it and got vertical. Talk about some of those things that the Falcons can improve, and especially on plays like that.
Okay, when the defense is called, everybody got to be on the same page. You can't assume nothing as a professional athlete, and particularly as a defensive unit. You have to play as one unit. If you don't, you're going to have problems. And one thing you can't do in the NFL, which is not acceptable, is busted plays. Because busted plays, guys are too good and you get paid too much money to not know your assignment. And when you see the touchdown, the first touchdown that the Colts had, that obviously those are busted coverage. I mean, I think Chuck, I might could have ran to the flat and caught that ball and ran in for a touchdown. It was wide open, man. It was wide open. So little stuff like that is, that's why you go to work. That's why you go out there and you put those hours in. That's why you watch game tape. And because one thing that you can control is your discipline, and you can control, being at practice, take care of the little assignment, make sure you get them right on game day. Then it's on game day, just worry about effort. You just give a lot of effort, and everything else should take care of itself.
You know, Jesse, one of the things that Chuck and I talk about each and every week are some of the great memories of Falcons history, and obviously you factor so prominently in those. I've said before, you and Chuck and you guys who won the NFC Championship game up there in Minnesota at the end of the 1998 season, I still consider that to be the greatest single win in Falcons history. And on our program each and every week here, we hear from Falcons fans who have great memories of that time. How much does it mean to you to know that folks are still talking about those games and look back fondly on those games and appreciate the heritage of this organization that you were such a big part of? What does that mean to you personally?
It means a great deal. You know, it means a great deal to me because I was fortunate enough to play for one team, which was the Atlanta Falcons. You know, grew up right here in the state of Georgia. So anytime the Falcons have seen success, it touches me deeply. And the same thing with the failures. But in 1998, going into that year, Chuck and I, no one thought we can do what we did at the beginning of the season. We got hot, we got on the road, and like everything else, it started to snowball. And we go up in Minnesota and beat a team that no one in the world can, no way we have a chance to beat them. So that is a part of Falcon history, and it's a big part of Falcon history. That was the first time we ever took the organization to the Super Bowl. And now, and every year when we're watching those tapes and you get the opportunity to see yourself year in and year out around the Super Bowl time, and it's so funny, in 1998, they're showing the highlights after the game, I can't see myself. Yeah, I can't see myself celebrating because Chuck Smith is on top of me. We both land on the turf and say, "Hey, man, can you believe we're going to the Super Bowl?" That was unbelievable. So, it's a lot of great memories. And for the fans out there, as professional athletes, we love that stuff, man. It becomes a part of us for life. It's not just about a paycheck. It's about the hard work and the effort and everything you try to put in as a group, to accomplish one goal, to get to the Super Bowl. So that year was unbelievable.
Well, Jesse, we really, really appreciate you being a part of our Miller Lite Minute today on AJC Falcons News Now, sponsored by Miller Lite. Thanks for your time, and Jesse, we'll look forward to hopefully getting a chance to speak to you again soon as well.
Hey, thanks a lot, Brent. I appreciate you guys, man. Y'all take care.
That's good stuff there from the Hammer himself, Jesse Tuggle. And, I am kind of a student of the history of Atlanta sports in a lot of ways, so I love getting a chance to hear that from Tuggle. But I also like his insight on this team right now, and he really very much said some of the same things you and I have already said, in the fact that you got to call it out for what it is today. I mean, Dan Quinn says himself that Monday's a Tell the Truth Monday in Flowery Branch, and you couldn't expect it to be any different on this show either, telling the truth about what didn't go well. But as Tuggle said, sometimes these seasons develop a momentum of their own. It worked out for you guys in 1998, and there's still a chance for Atlanta to hopefully find some momentum here in 2019 there as well, but it's got to be better football than it was yesterday in Indianapolis.
And I see some things that they can clearly fix.
Yeah.
16 turnovers, that instantly gives you a chance to win. So some of the things that affected the Falcons, first half they need to start faster, that's a mindset, okay? But the 16 turnovers, that is something that can change and the Falcons can fix. The season's not over. But evaluating now, as we'll do today, we'll move on Friday at 1. We'll start looking at the next game.
Right.
But it's not over. And Falcon fans, it's not, but we know our team needs fixes of the flaws.
Yeah. So I'm going to do some Matt Ryan audio in a moment, including his own ownership of the interception he threw yesterday. Let me get a few comments before we get there, though. Joey Couch says, the Hammer, best player in Falcons history. I know you got great respect for Tuggle as well. Joey showing a little love to the Hammer. I love to see that.
Good call, Joey.
John Mitchell says, pass, third down run. Maybe not too happy with the play calling, it sounds like. Darlene Johnson, though, says, Falcons fan for life. I am, ride or die. And, listen, coming up on Sunday against the Titans, this is a day in which the Falcons need their fans. We saw an example this Saturday night in Athens with the Georgia fans, what they did, to create an intense atmosphere there. Falcons fans did a great job of that going back last Sunday against Philadelphia. With Tennessee coming to town, this is that time for the Darlene Johnsons of the world to kind of show up and make a lot of noise and create that atmosphere. Another AFC South opponent, which can be a little tricky, although Tennessee is really struggling at quarterback. But other than that, it's a chance to come up here and create a big home field advantage for the Falcons on Sunday.
Well, 2-2 is a lot different than 1-3.
Yeah,
big difference. Now, this Tennessee Titans team, they cannot protect the quarterback. I mean, and look, BA, you get 4 sacks against them.
Yeah.
These guys can't protect their
swim move.
Yeah, see, look at your hands. Look at that. Nice swim move, right? Nice swim move. That's not.
I just swim
hold
with
up.
my cooler all the way up
the Miller Lite cooler. You can pick that up, right?
Yeah.
But That was a good one. This is a good team to get right. You want your crowd to be. Hey, you know it too much, bro.
Yeah, I guess so.
But you're right. You know, this is a good team for the Falcons. They're a one-trick pony. They run the ball with Derrick Henry. They can't throw. The defense is a little suspect, but I think this is a game the Falcons should expect to win.
Yeah, absolutely. Simeon T-Bone Hubbard talking about this. We're going to do more of this later on the show. You got Ron Rivera takes the Panthers in Arizona yesterday. They get a big road win. And by the way, Kyle Allen, that's a pretty good-looking quarterback right now.
Watch it, Cam.
Teddy Bridgewater for the Saints. You go up there and you win that game in Seattle. We'll talk more about this later on.
Okay.
But honestly, as on a long list of bad things that happened for Atlanta yesterday, these NFC South teams going on the road, especially the Saints, because most people would have been on the Seattle side on that one. In fact, the TV broadcasters were all over Seattle in this one. That's as bad for Atlanta as anything is the fact that you had these NFC South teams yesterday establish themselves on the road, and Carolina looks like it's found a quarterback.
Carolina, Christian McCaffrey looked incredible yesterday, so they surprised me. I didn't expect that from them, but the New Orleans Saints and Teddy Bridgewater, I thought Seattle was going to drag them. Mm-hmm. Alvin Kamara, I don't know how much the highest paid running back in the league makes.
Yeah.
He needs to get more. This guy is special. But Teddy Bridgewater, the Saints show, they are going to be totally fine. This NFC South just got a lot better, in my opinion. In Tampa, they blew a big game. Tampa blew it, but Tampa is a lot better than I thought they'd be.
Yeah, and by the way, if I'm Carolina, I'm not going back to Cam Newton.
No,
I'm riding with Allen.
You can't do that.
You can't. All the fashion show stuff he wants to go through. Right now, Allen looks like that guy. But Falcons fans are worried about their own team. Matt Ryan yesterday talked about the fact that on a day in which, with running backs and everything else, Indianapolis is controlling the clock and owning the football for a large portion of that game. When Atlanta's possessions are limited, you got to take advantage of them. That's something that the Falcons did not do yesterday. Here's what Matt Ryan said about that.
Today, on limited possessions, we had two good opportunities to come away with points, and didn't come away with points on either of those possessions. And turned out, this was the kind of game that we needed those scores. We had one where a penalty kind of knocked us out of field goal range, and then a turnover by myself. And those are things that we've got to do better, specifically on the road, if you're going to beat a good football team. I was proud of the way the guys fought in the second half, but in this league, it's about every snap, and we've got to find a way to be better every snap.
And then to follow that up, Ryan went on to talk about some of those mistakes, the penalties, the turnover, everything else. What that does, the feeling inside the organization. Dan Quinn spoke openly about his anger after the loss to the Vikings. How about the follow-up to that now after the Colts? Here was Ryan's description of the mental feeling after you see your team play so poorly, Ryan, again.
Well, I think everybody's angry with not performing the way that we can. The penalties, turnovers, those kind of things. We've had too much of that in the first couple of weeks of the season. We had too much of that today. So those are things that we've got to clean up to be a better football team. A lot of them we can control, the procedural stuff, the pre-snap penalties. That's on us, and that comes down to discipline. We've got to be better. We've got to be better across the board as players when we get our chances.
Yeah, it's just a killer. And, we talked after that Minnesota game about, how you feed off emotion, how you use that. Seemed to work at home, the road mentality that Quinn talked about. How do you find that again? But, are you turning over a table after a game like this? And what's happening in Flowery Branch? Are you kicking a chair? Is it more about, hey, button up, get back to work? Because honestly, I could see it one of two ways. I could see it being the kind of thing where, you do, put your fist through a wall, or you say it's not about getting angry. It's about being sharper. It's about being more focused, about being more polished. And sometimes that's the opposite direction of emotional anger. I'm honestly not sure what the right answer is, but I know the fact that we're even asking the question today is a tough scene for Atlanta.
All right, you got three different guys. Let me break it down for you,
All
B.
right.
These are three different guys after the game in football, not necessarily Falcons. The first guy comes in, he sits down, he's like, oh, man, I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm getting my check today.
Mm-hmm.
Then you got the second guy who comes in, he's beating everything up. Boom, boom, he's mad, he's angry, he's looking at everybody, comes in there, he's not saying something. Now the guy who's the baller, the guy who's ready to change what happens for the next game, he comes in, he's watching film, and when his play's coming up, he does like this. He gets uncomfortable. And that's what happens. There are three different kind of guys when you come to the locker room after the game. To me, it's those guys who got to be accountable. The eye in the sky don't lie. So when you're talking about Tell the Truth Monday, watch the eye in the sky Monday. You'll see exactly what happened, who did what, and everybody's accountable. So guys look at each other. They say the cliche, holding each other accountable. No, they look at each other and like, yo, dude, you affecting the team. You might not hear it outside here,
Yeah.
and I understand the brotherhood, but in all the teams,
Yeah.
cats are calling each other out in the locker room. I'm just telling you, to each other, communicating each other in a positive way mostly.
Well, Teresa Spears says maybe they need to get angry, and I guess maybe they do. Terrell Pridgeon says he was certainly plenty angry watching it on TV. Rudy Trejo says the turnovers from Matt Ryan need to stop. And Rudy, he did address that yesterday, kind of explaining what happened there on that turnover, certainly owning his role in it. Here's what Ryan said about his interception.
We're in a spot where we've got 3 points on the board with Matt as our kicker. Get the football to an outlet, keep moving it, and we did a nice job of that, most of the day. But at this position in this league, it's every snap. You've got to make great decisions every snap, and that was a poor decision on my part.
So let me ask you a serious question, and there may not be a good answer to this, and if there's not, that's fine. What do you think is going on here? Because we've seen Ryan make thousands of throws in his career, and most of them have been pretty effective. And yet, a couple of the picks, even though I sort of defended him a little bit after the Philadelphia game, because I don't mind my quarterback throwing the ball into a tight window. You're going to have some punishment that comes along with that every now and then. But now, when you see it through 3 games, we're seeing Ryan make throws that I would say that just uncharacteristic for him. What do you think is going on there?
Well, I tell you, I feel like I know exactly what's going on. Since the Super Bowl, the offensive line has been atrocious. Since the Super Bowl, he's been sacked just as much as any quarterback in the league. And on this play, Falcon fans, as you watched, on the interception in the red zone, I talked earlier about this Saints defensive line cannot rush. Matt thought that they were coming. He feels the pressure now because he's been beat up. It's just like anything else. If you've been hit, you're going to react, and he's human. I mean, everybody thinks, well, quarterback, they got to be hey, yeah, he's tough, but also he's now feeling the pass rush, because if you go specifically and watch that play, he had time. There was nothing behind him. He rushed it because I thought they were closing in. I think it happens because the offensive line's been atrocious. They've talked about the offensive line for years. They got an offensive line now. Do you trust 2 rookies when they were in there? Do you? So I think a lot of it has to do with his lack of trust and been getting hit over the last 3 years.
Because to be clear, and I think you've already said this, while he may be feeling those, that heat coming on him because of how this, group has played now going back to last year, the Falcons' offensive line was not really part of the problem as much yesterday, though, right?
No, but it wasn't part of the problem, but I'm just saying he's seeing what they say ghosts. He's feeling the pressure.
Yeah.
He's at the equivalent of he's feeling footsteps. On that play, that's exactly what happened. He thought the rush was closing in. He had another 2-3 seconds, and he forced it. So a lot of great quarterbacks, sometimes they start getting beat up like that and feeling that way. But to me, Matt Ryan, it starts with the trust, but also, let me just say this, and it's easy to point fingers at Matt Ryan. Yes, he took a chance, but the receivers ain't exactly running open in space. So hey, Julio Jones is running in space. Sanu caught a couple passes. I don't know where Ridley is. Hooper starts and comes in early. So, hey, it takes 2 to tangle now. So as much as we want to beat up Matt Ryan, we can't see what's going on the receivers, because I didn't see a lot of guys running free in this game.
Yeah. Well, Jarrett Smith says if you look at the Eagles game, Barnett was on them all night long. So, yeah, that's a different kind of defensive line. He was certainly feeling a bit more pressure.
Hold up. I watched the pass rush. That's a climb to my. I wish Derek was on the line. Derek Barnett didn't bust a grape in that game. Fletcher Cox was pushing.
Hey, did you say he didn't bust a grape?
Look, I love Derek. He's one of my guys, and I watch him just like I watch the guys that I work with every play. I ain't trying to call you out now. We got to be real on the show, Falcon fans. Derek Barnett, he barely showed up because I was mad that he didn't get a sack.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Something else I want to talk about here for a moment, and to me this is just heartbreaking. Keanu Neal, who has worked, first of all, when healthy, is one of the real solutions. I mean, you can't even say anything other than that. Keanu Neal, when healthy, is a very, very important part, proven part of this Falcons defense. Courageous effort to return from injury, and then yesterday, and by the way, many of you are probably already aware of this, but D. Orlando Ledbetter does tweet 19 minutes ago that a league source has told the AJC that Keanu Neal is out for the season with a torn Achilles. It was reported as an Achilles injury after yesterday. Quinn didn't want to talk about it, obviously fearing the worst, but didn't want to offer any kind of confirmation. D. Orlando Ledbetter from the AJC has been able to confirm, though, and this is terrible news, but it is factual news, that it looks like a torn Achilles for Keanu Neal. It's just devastating news for a player that fans like on the field with good reason, who has worked hard to get back from injury, and now you find the Achilles thing, which I mean, I'm not a former athlete, but I would say when it comes to the recovery from an Achilles, that's got to be as bad as any of them. That's just got to be as difficult to go through, the pain associated with it, the inability to really move around at all in the initial stages of that. That's a tough one. I hate that for Neil so bad.
Yeah, I do too, and I hate it because he works so hard, and he's a great kid. I had a chance to talk to him just one time, and I was like, wow, he was recovering with his knee. I said, I've been there, man. He's like, how long does it take? Just a great guy, asking questions, but you feel really sorry in a situation like this, especially when you see this is his dream. Comes out of Florida, goes to his team, makes it to the Super Bowl as a rookie, and fantastic, an enforcer.
A draft pick the Falcons were criticized for a little bit because in some cases they thought the organization might be reaching for Neil, but Neil from the get-go was a perfect fit in that safety role for what Dan Quinn.
He's an enforcer. Yeah, that's what he was.
By the way, after the game, Falcons quarterback Matt Ryan talked about his own feelings about seeing Neil go down with another injury. Here's what Ryan said about that.
It's awful. He battled so hard to come back from injury last year too, and you see somebody go down, you see all of the work that they put into it, and then having to deal with that again today, it's tough. I mean, he's a great teammate. He's a great competitor. He loves this game so much. You never want to see guys go down, and you understand their disappointment and frustration.
All right, so let me make a pitch for you on something here for a minute. You're a former player. You understand the life of a player. I've been a fan of the game my entire life. I kind of understand the mentality of a fan. With Neil not available, because obviously that would be Falcons fans' first choice. With Neil not available, there are a lot of Atlanta fans who are already saying, why not go out and get Eric Berry, a guy who's also shown some courage over the course of his career, dealing with more than just injuries. He's, kind of battled cancer and some things like that as well. But this is an SEC guy. This is a Georgia guy. You can make a case Eric Berry is one of the best high school players ever in the state of Georgia, a dominant player for the Tennessee Vols, a guy that's available as a free agent right now. I'm telling you right now, if you want a PR win, bring in Eric Berry to play in place of the injured Keanu Neal. The salary cap part of it, I'm going to let the capologists, figure out how all that works together and figures out together. But in terms of a PR win for the organization, giving Berry a shot as a replacement for Keanu Neal, fans are going to love that. Why not make that move?
I think it'd be a good move. You make a good point. And I think one of the most important things that Dan Quinn looks for in players is fitting in the brotherhood. Eric Berry is compliant. You've never heard of Eric Berry, anyone having a problem with him. He brings instant credibility, and he also is a leader. That's really important. Ricardo Allen, he's stepping up as a leader, but Eric Berry brings instant credibility. And I think he does a lot for this team as far as leadership because he'll fit right in because he's a brotherhood type of guy. He's a great fit.
I mean, ultimately, one thing that all fans have in common is they want to see their team pulling out all stops. And Berry seems like that guy. And listen, I don't want to oversell this because while people remember him in the SEC and remember his high school days in the state of Georgia, I mean, there's probably a reason why he's available right now. I mean, you know what I'm saying? I mean, obviously, this is a guy who's kind of been through a lot with his own career as well, and he's certainly not the player he was probably in his prime. I don't necessarily need for him to be if I'm Atlanta, though. So I'm not going to tell you that this guy's going to come in and he's going to be the next Ronnie Lott. I mean, obviously, if he was that, he'd already be playing for somebody else's roster. But in terms of we're going to throw everything we can at the wall and hope we find some way to fix some of the stuff that's broken. That certainly sends that kind of message. This team was never going to trade for Jalen Ramsey, but going out and get Eric Berry off the street, I don't think that's such a ungettable get at this point in time.
And let me tell you why what you said makes a lot of sense. Eric Berry doesn't have to cover man-to-man. This isn't a man-to-man cover one base kind of scheme.
Yeah.
The Falcons like to play zone. They like to play cover 2, cover 3. Safeties have deep thirds on, Rico, and you'd have Keanu Neal. They got 1/3 of the field. So I think it fits perfect because this is a zone-based team, so it takes away from Eric having to go man-to-man and all those other things. You got KZ to cover the tight ends, Devondre Campbell. I think he fits in perfect in this zone scheme.
Rudy Trejo agrees with that. Terrell Pridgeon kind of agrees with that. It'd just be a popular move, and right now a popular move is not necessarily such a bad thing. Comedian King Vincent also says on Facebook that it just seems like we make the same mistake time and time again. All we're hearing is we've got to work on it and do it, but it's not getting done. And I do get the frustration on that because I feel like I understand both sides of this. On the one hand, I get the Falcons fans' frustration. And honestly, that's the biggest reason of all why this show exists, is to be a platform for fans to express the frustration they have. I totally get that. However, we just talked about this a moment ago. I think Atlanta staying patient with itself and not getting, I guess, too emotional about the fact that it's been such a rough start at 1-2 thus far. I think that mental approach is probably appropriate for the Falcons here as well. Even if the sort of the brotherhood's kind of, maybe doing a little infighting behind the scenes, you don't necessarily show that up in public facing. You say the right thing when the microphone's in front of you. So I think right now the Falcons are kind of doing what they have to do, saying what they have to say. Yet I also understand the fans' frustration to say, when's it going to get fixed and when's it going to get better?
Well, I think the fans will want to hear this. Number one, we got to stay in our plan. Everybody in the Falcons organization got to be rolling together. You come into this thing together, you got to roll together, no matter, you got to win or lose together. So that's important. But remember, Falcon fans, you can't just change things overnight now. This is the stuff you've been putting. This started in February when you drafted, all through the process and getting the new players you got and all those different things. This is a plan. This plan isn't going to change overnight. It's in everything you see. They just got to do better.
Yeah.
They're not going to start doing new things. You're not going to start seeing different kind of schemes and stuff like that right now. They have to make the right adjustments. But everything they put in OTAs, everything you saw in summer training, this is who the Falcons are. They just got to do it better.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. By the way, Mark Barron also said something else I want to make sure we mention. On the interception of Ryan, one of the things that is the most frustrating to me is this is not forcing the ball to Calvin Ridley. This is not forcing the ball to Julio Jones, decisions that you can certainly live with. This is trying to cram it into Luke Stocker. No disrespect to Stocker, but I'm not sure the return
Or the balls.
Yeah, I'm not
Or the
sure.
balls.
I'm not sure the return on that investment is exactly what you want it to be.
No, he's a blocker. It was actually a couple of times he threw to Luke Stocker that I was kind of surprised. But on that play, it ain't even about Luke. Man, it looked like about 20 defenders surrounded. It was like almost 50 people surrounded. I mean, there was no chance, no way in the world.
That's just not the guy, as Mark said in the comment section, that's just not the guy you want to force the ball to right there.
No, it didn't. And it's just an ugly interception. But I'll tell you this, everybody's watching now,
Right.
and you can't tell me. I don't care who you are, and that we've all been there. I've been in games. I'm gonna use me as a quick example. I've been in games where I had got 5 sacks one year. I didn't get a sack for 4 or 5 games. The count was on.
Yeah.
The count was on. So Matt Ryan now, guess what? Every time you throw, it's gonna be micromanaged.
You're thinking about it?
And he's no question. He's gonna try to be more careful. It's part of the deal. Anybody can say, well, I put that behind me. Yeah, right. Players remember, and you try not to do things. You don't want to do the same thing twice, right? So how do I forget that?
Yeah.
You just got to go out and start playing more in the scheme and stop taking crazy chances.
All right, we've got some fun stuff coming up. Chuck's got a cool thing from his career he's going to show us. So we'll look at some of the scores from Week 3 around the NFL. I also want to remind you about this. I knocked it off the set here earlier when I tried to do my swim move.
Swim was a little low. We'll work on getting it up, dropping the elbow down, getting it up higher.
Nonetheless, you can get this for yourself, not the one I knocked to the ground. We'll give you one fresh and clean out of the box. It's our special thank you to you when you become a subscriber to the AJC. The website you can go to is subscribe.ajc.com/Falcons News Now. Once again, subscribe.ajc.com/Falcons News Now. And a lot of different options for you, whether you want the daily e-paper, you want a combination of the e-paper and Sunday home delivery, 7-day paper home delivery, lots of different ways for you to stay in touch. It's really the way to make sure you get all the Falcons information. I just told you before, D'Orlando Ledbetter, we're reporting on Keanu O'Neal and his injury. When news like that happens, you want to know it. The best way to do that is to be a subscriber to the AJC. So the website is subscribe.ajc.com/Falcons News Now. When you choose one of those offers, as a special thank you to you, you get this really cool, officially Atlanta Falcons branded cooler. Of course, the AJC is a proud partner of the Atlanta Falcons. Let me talk about what we mentioned this a moment ago, but let me address this for a second, in particular on some scores. Actually, well, let's just do all the scores, and we'll kind of get this as we do. Let's look at Week 3 here around the NFL. You want to go back to Thursday for a moment. Gardner Minshew's a fun quarterback for the Jacksonville Jaguars right now, and maybe a little bit of a preview of what you'll see this upcoming Sunday with the Titans. Buffalo does go to 3-0. They get past the Cincinnati Bengals. Miami continues to be awful. Dallas gets the 31-6 win there. Green Bay 27-16 over the Broncos.
Broncos 0-3.
Yeah.
Elway got to be on the hot seat.
Yeah, listen, some of the personnel decisions there, I'm not so sure about. Kansas City, Baltimore, in a lot of ways, one of the more exciting games of the day. Baltimore, a good job for figuring out a way to keep this one close. The Chiefs, man, they have so many different offensive weapons, so many different ways to make you score. They have really found a way to make those wide receivers plug and play there. It is really fun to watch. I know that Andy Reid has all kinds of problems in the playoffs, and that's well documented. When it comes to game day, week in and week out offensive coaching, I'm not so sure how many guys in my lifetime have had a better game plan than what Andy Reid brings to the table.
I agree, but it don't hurt to have Patrick Mahomes and have had some of the great ones that he's
Yeah,
had.
no,
But
that's
Patrick
true.
Mahomes, wow.
Yeah.
I mean, just unbelievable.
Yeah, Minnesota gets past the Oakland Raiders. Vikings looking pretty good thus far. I told y'all, watch out a little closer than the experts might have thought with the Jets and the Patriots. The Jets were getting way too many points there in that one. I'll take a win on that. How about Philadelphia following up the loss to the Falcons? Another receiver drops the ball here late. Detroit goes on the road, gets a pretty surprising win. That's pretty ugly for the Eagles, right?
Yeah, the Eagles were perennial favorites in some people's eyes to win the NFC, get the Super Bowl, but struggle a lot of cheesecake and funnel cake being thrown right now in Philly.
I want to talk more about this. The Panthers, I thought, sent a real message. Now Arizona's terrible, but you got to find yourself a winnable road game here and there.
Yeah, I don't
go
know
up.
what the message though be.
Oh, come on now. I mean, when you bring it back, a quarterback in, he's lighting the world on fire. You go out there, you make it look easy like that, even against the bad team. Road wins are hard to come by,
Well,
Chuck.
yeah, I know that, but we'll see what Carolina does moving forward.
All right, we'll see. I tell you what, I liked Allen on Sunday. I'll admit that.
Well, you couldn't help but like that.
How about your boy Daniel Jones? Steps in, begins his career.
I love it.
18-point comeback he brings back.
Balling. Can run. I like how he ran with the ball.
You think he's going to be good?
I think he's going to be great. I think the Giants are going to end up being one of the stories of the season. I'm not saying they're going to get the playoffs, but I think they're going to win, I say between 6 and 8 now. I really believe with him under the helm.
Well, they did the Falcons a favor by doling out a division loss to the Bucs yesterday. Watch out for Houston. They loom here in a couple of weeks. I'm going to tell you the same thing about them I said about Indianapolis not too long ago on last week's show. These AFC South games for Atlanta are tricky. This is an important part of your schedule, especially with Breeze out for New Orleans. Be careful with Houston coming up in 2 weeks' time. Of course, the Saints do get the win at Seattle. You got to say that's a message. If you can go on the road win with Teddy Bridgewater and Alvin Kamara doing some of the stuff that he did,
they got some guys.
Yeah,
they got guys across the board. I mean, Saints are scary.
Garoppolo starting to play pretty well for the 49ers here.
3-0. Kyle Shanahan.
Yeah, doing a better job.
Yeah,
doing a better job. Cleveland. Freddie Kitchens, Baker Mayfield, what you want to say about that situation?
Baker Mayfield talked too much smack, and the Giants quarterback looks to be in one game.
Yeah.
Last week he was better than Baker.
The whole world was on L.A. last night, and they ended up getting rewarded for that. Is it Chicago-Washington? Is that the Monday night game tonight? Chicago-Washington? What do you think about that? I don't have a ton of interest in that, but what do you think about that?
Well,
is that a good game?
No, I got the receiver. What is it? Shepard.
Okay.
Right, for the Giants, is that right?
Sure.
Yeah. Shepard, but I don't need him because I already scrubbed up the person I was playing.
Well, there you go.
He's on my bench right now, Mike.
So
he's on my bench.
Chuck's a big fantasy player. Y'all got to know
the first year, that's why I'm so geeked about it. This is the first year I played fantasy like in a decade. And I am 1-2. My wife beat me, and then Richard Seymour.
Is that okay?
So
he's in the league with Richard Seymour.
Yeah,
How about that?
So a little dog talk. I'm in Richard Seymour's Brilliance League, and I'm 1-2.
Well, there you go. All right, so AJC Falcons News Now, sponsored by Miller Lite. We like to have a little fun around here. I mean, listen, it's a rough day. We're not going to tell you it's not when it comes to Atlanta, but we do like to have a little fun and look around the rest of the league. And also, Chuck brings some stuff in from his career. I always enjoy that. One of my favorite things, and today's going to be no different on that.
All right, this ball needed to be pumped up, but I had to pull it out the hat anyways down in storage. This is the football. I was lucky to get defensive MVP. We were playing against the Patriots, 41-10.
Yeah.
This is the year we went to the Super Bowl. What makes this ball significant, that this is the game when the Dirty Bird started.
It began.
This is the start of the Dirty Bird in New England. O.J. Santiago did something with the one. So Jamal Anderson did this one.
Yeah.
And then there was a battle to see who had the best one in the locker room. Jamal scored more touchdowns than O.J., obviously.
Right.
But this was the game.
Because, Big Play Ray Buchanan kind of had his own Dirty Bird there as well. He kind of had more of the arms flapping type of thing.
Remember old school Morris Day and the time?
Yeah, a little bit like that. Because that was the touchdown song back then. Morris, that was the touchdown song.
This is the game, and we appreciate the Atlanta Falcons making the Dirty Bird now the official dance of the team. So when the Falcons score,
I'm glad to have it back, I got to say. I'm glad to have the Dirty Bird back. It belongs in the game. It belongs, the Braves get the chop, Falcons get the Dirty Bird. It's a part of the thing. It belongs here.
It's awesome, though. I mean, Falcons, they're adding more stuff in, the great game day environment. It needs to be the same way it was against Philly for the Titans.
How did Jamal come up with his Dirty Bird?
Just he can dance. He was kind of like a.
He was always going to have those light on his feet. I can see that.
I mean, he was running for 150 yards a game. He was dancing in the locker room, dancing on the field.
I used to do it good. I don't know if I can still do it anymore. I also knocked the cooler off the desk at some point in time today, so I guess I better be careful with any kind of stuff.
Let me share this.
Well, I appreciate all of you for being here and being a part of our program here today. We'll be back again on Friday. For those of you who may be new to all this, don't know what we're doing, my name's Brandon Adams. This is the former Falcon Chuck Smith. We talk about the Falcons. Look forward to previewing the game against the Titans with it coming up on Sunday. We'll be back Friday at 1 p.m. to do all of that. But you can help us out by letting your friends know, whether you're on Falcons message boards or just hanging out with folks during the week. For the friends of yours who are fans of the Birds, let them know we're talking about it every Monday and Friday at 1 p.m. right here on AJC Falcons News Now, sponsored by Miller Lite. Speaking of Miller Lite, don't forget they're the official beer of the Atlanta Falcons. It tastes great, and it's just 96 calories. It's a huge thing for us to be able to have Miller Lite as part of the program there as well. So y'all have a great week. Let's shake this one off. Get ready for Friday. We'll see you back here at 1 p.m. for AJC Falcons News Now, sponsored by Miller Lite. Talk to you then, everybody.